Welcome back to United TV, Manchester United fans, and we're going to be looking at the two big stories of late last night, early this morning. And Elliot Anderson being talked about a lot by Ben Jacobs, but we're going to go into the story that was emerging in a few different sources, more BBC sources that are a little bit more reliable. They were saying that Manchester United are looking at making an offer for Elliot Anderson. This is the story that was being put out there by quite a few journalists, and this was talked about by IndyCar a couple of weeks ago, but nobody really believed that source too much. We're going to probably find out relatively soon, I think, if something happens. The question really is going to be how much should Manchester United go for someone like Anderson? If he's the top target, should we be looking at close to the 100 million? Is it going to be 80 plus add ons? We were having a debate last night. Most people would obviously like to get the price down if it's possible. There is talk on the table as well of a new contract for Rodri at Man City. That could be one of the key points here. Manchester United, the too many stuff is kind of difficult to call at the moment with too many. I think the other one that's an emerging story and does seem to be, I suppose, quite exciting. He's a very good young player. West Ham probably getting relegated at the moment. They've got to probably try and pull out at least like a maybe get 3 or 4 points in the last couple of games to stay up. But looking at the situation with West Ham and Fernandes, I think the price is going to be estimated maybe like 60 million. It could be like quite expensive if West Ham stay up. I think most people are thinking it's going to be cheaper if they get relegated, and it seemed almost certainly that it would be cheaper if they get relegated. In which case, the price West Ham want to get more than they paid for him, which is about 42 with add-ons. So it could be like maybe 50 million pounds could get this deal done, which would not be bad. The emerging story, which I saw last night and I've seen it this morning, and I know a lot of Arsenal content creators are talking about it as well, is that Arsenal are considering to make a move for Fernandes as well. They want to strengthen their midfield this summer. Clearly, he's a quality player. He's going to be linked to top clubs. Are Manchester United in the driving force for this one because of like things that Bruno Fernandes has been saying, the relationship between him and the player? So a lot to go into. I'm going to jump into the chat, take your comments, take your thoughts, and see what you're thinking as well. So big up to everybody in the chat. So I'll go through just quickly say welcome to G Wolf, Cody, Malps, Gaz, and who else is in the chat? United I Die. Good to see you legends in the chat. If you're able to share the stream as we're live, that'd be absolutely fantastic to get a few people to notice the channel again. Also, big up to you, Howard. Yeah, I hope the community is doing well. I will maybe put a poll in the chat, and we're going to be looking forward to the Forest game as well. So if you want to scout Elliot Anderson, Sunday could be the perfect day to do that. We're going to find out what he can do against Manchester United, probably against Casemiro and Kobe Mainoo, who are, we know they've been good midfielders for Man United the last few months, so we might be able to read into that a little bit. I think Mateus Fernandes is definitely going to be on everyone's shortlist based on what he's been doing this season and on his age as well. So Mateus Fernandes, Manchester United, Arsenal, PSG, at least interested. So are we at the front line of that queue? So apparently, according to sources yesterday, Manchester United obviously rate him very highly. He's apparently the third top target for Man United's midfield rebuild. I think he's an excellent player. I think the price could be really good if West Ham get relegated, and it would be one of these deals where can United get this deal done quite quickly? Like, is this something we can do quite fast if West Ham go down? I hope so. Right, we're gonna have to see what happens with that one. Mark said he's off to Arsenal then, or he plays in London. I think it depends on there's more than just that. I think with Mateus Fernandes, Manchester United's obviously a massive club. Bruno Fernandes knows the player well and has been talking about him in the last probably like the last couple of months, saying how much he rates him, how much he think he'd be a good signing. And I think that's going to be a factor as well. I think that might be a bit of a factor that we can look into. So Fernandes loves Bruno, so I do think we're at the front of the queue. I think this is something that you have to look at as well. That do Manchester United, will Manchester United be able to offer Fernandes more first team football than Arsenal? You would probably feel at this point in time they would. Manchester United, in all likelihood, despite the recent situation with the wage bill and the situation at the club, Manchester United almost certainly will be paying more money than Arsenal as well in terms of salaries that historically they have done. I think United are getting their financial situation back in order. Casemiro's contract's off the books. Jadon Sancho's contract's off the books. I think Rashford's contract should probably be off the books as well. I think if Man United are looking at restructuring, there's no doubt that they can offer Fernandes a sensible package that is going to be at least competitive with anything he's going to get from Arsenal. And I think also Man United can offer probably that they're going to be spending as much money, if not more, than Arsenal in the near future if you get Champions League football. So I think there's going to be definitely a bit of competition, but that's good because if there's no competition, for me, sometimes it sends out the message that this isn't necessarily a great player to do. What if West Ham do survive? If West Ham survive, he's just going to cost more. That would be that. I think if West Ham get relegated, you get somewhat of a bargain. If West Ham survive, and that's probably at the moment like I suppose at the moment you'd say that it's unlikely they survive, but you never know. Like they could put up a bit of a fight, but if they do, it just pushes the price up, and then we'll be talking about a completely different price. Probably we'll probably be talking about 60+ million if West Ham survive. I think they still want to make a profit. Could they rinse even more money out of Man United? It's possible. It's possible West Ham could. They could try and charge an astronomical price, but I think you have to be mindful that he did cost them about 42 million, so they'd want to get a significant profit. Would 60 be enough? I'm not sure, but no, I think all it means is that I think he still leaves West Ham. I think he just costs a bit more, and saying if he went to Arsenal or PSG, he'd be a fringe man. I think he would probably be. It might be more difficult to break into Arsenal than it is Manchester United. If you consider Aiden Heaven's a top quality player, and if you're looking at Manchester United getting Aiden Heaven for almost nothing, about what 1.5 million, and Aiden Heaven looked at Arsenal, didn't see a pathway to the first team, joined Manchester United for that reason. So I think that you've got to look at every individual player as a no different individual. No, they're different individuals. They've got different reasons for what they're doing. And I think if you look at Fernandes, I think the Bruno influence is going to be a bit underrated. So you hope that Ineos act quickly on this one. I hope so as well. I hope that Ineos get involved quickly. This is the player that when you see some deals and think if West Ham get relegated, and I think that's where a lot of the excitement was being put about there, then the price is going to come down for sure. And that's why you start looking at it thinking at 70 million, Fernandes is a quality player, but quite expensive. If you drop the price down to like say 50, suddenly there's not a lot. I can't think of any players out there that are going to cost 50 that you'd think is he going to be as good. And say, is he a profile of midfielder that we need? Who is he replacing or complementing, in my opinion? So that's a really good question. And in terms of like this one, let me just double check something because I think with Fernandez, I think a lot of it depends on if you're looking at trying to get the balance in midfield, I think a lot of people are probably looking at it thinking, do we play him alongside Kobe Mainoo, or are we looking at someone to replace Kobe Mainoo? If you look at someone like, say, Tchouaméni, he's very defensive, obviously. If you look at Elliot Anderson, he wins the ball back loads. He would be a great complementary person alongside that. So, in terms of like, if you're familiar with, I think most people are probably quite familiar with Mateus Fernandes at the moment. And if you look at Mateus Fernandes, so I'm just checking something. If you're looking at what Mateus Fernandes is very good at, I would say Mateus Fernandes has a skill set that is complementary to Kobe Mainoo. So if you're looking at playing alongside Kobe Mainoo, some of the things that Mateus Fernandes really excels at, in terms of like, if you look at him at Premier League last season, possession won incredibly high. So I think 90th percentile for possession won. Duels won, he wins a high percentage of duels. He's above Elliot Anderson in terms of percentage of duels won. Possession won, he's right up there as well. Not really a ball carrier, but forward passes, very good. Progressive passes, generally. And I think if you're looking at Mateus Fernandes, and defensively, he's excellent. So if you're looking at possession winning and duel winning, he can do that better than Casemiro, but he's not going to be. He's not going to have the. He's obviously quite young. To compare him with Casemiro is a bit harsh, but I think he complements Kobe Mainoo extremely well because Kobe Mainoo, he's got ball carrying, he's got dribbling. We've seen that. He's got progressive passes, is very good as well. So I think if you're looking at the situation, he would work quite nicely, and he would. But again, he's not going to have the experience of Casemiro. He's not going to have that, say, the ability that Casemiro has in like line breaking passes. But in terms of like a basic skill set, he defensively he does the same sort of thing as Anderson. Like he would be, a good signing for Man United. So I think we get him. Bruno influence, West Ham relegation, more game time than others. There's a lot of good points you make there, Omar. So these are the factors, and like, why would a player choose this player over Manchester? Like, why would he choose Manchester United over Arsenal? And I think some of the questions are going to be like he chooses Manchester United because you got the Bruno influence, the size of the club, you've got West Ham relegation, so the price is a good price, and you could potentially offer more game time. I would make a point and say I do think you get more game time at Manchester United than Arsenal. That I think that's a factor, and that's something that players will consider. If you're a young player, you've got to consider like how many games are you going to be able to get as well. It's going to be, it's going to be certainly a factor as well. And so you say Mateus Fernandes is better than Mainu. I think they're doing like different things at the moment. But if you look at these sort of things, that I think the good thing about Mateus Fernandes is if you're looking at building a midfield and you're looking at complementary parts, then it works well with Mainu. That some of the things that Mainu's not as good at is that the strengths of Fernandes. So I think when you look at it as a package and think, right, these two guys are in your midfield, I think Fernandes does the work that like Mainu doesn't necessarily do as much. So I think Mainu does okay on defensive work, but Matheus Fernandes would excel at that. So it's like for me, it's like about if you there's certain players that maybe wouldn't work that well with Kobe Mainu. Actually, looking at Tonali doesn't win possession back as much, doesn't win. So I think Matheus Fernandes for me is actually a better signing for Man United than Tonali. Looking at the data and looking at what do these players bring to the midfield, I think Matheus Fernandes fits a lot better. If you're assuming that Main is going to be in the team and is going to be built around, then I think Matheus Fernandes is probably one of the best players you can buy at that sort of age. So yeah, versatile. And this is a perfect deal. This is it feels a little bit like if West Ham got relegated and you could get this deal done for, say, 50 million ish, it would be probably one of the best deals Man United could do. Like, you would be looking at that one and say, Spurs, yes, I think there's going to be a lot decided over the weekend. So, West Ham could get relegated if results go against them this weekend, and then maybe we'll see things click into gear. I think it's going to take a bit of time, isn't it? And would I take Nico Williams as so? I don't know how much would he cost. I think is the I don't see Man United spending too much on those sort of areas. And say we should 100% be going for Sangare, been one of the best players in this position in Europe, been on loan about 4 times and has developed very well. I think maybe this is going to be one that how much is Sangare going to cost? Maybe like Sangare is obviously a very good player. I'm wondering whether Fernandez edges ahead of him because he's been in the Premier League and West Ham might be getting relegated, so maybe the price of those two players might be similar. I think Sangare is what 20? Is he about 23? So maybe I'm not saying that. Yeah, obviously he's not old, but I'm wondering whether Man United are just going for someone that's just slightly younger, has got Premier League experience. It could be a slight edge to why they go for Fernandez, and maybe they see Fernandez as just having a bit of a higher ceiling. Which all these are good factors. They're all sensible reasons. And what do people think is the likelihood of us actually getting Fernandez? Like, is it going to be a Bruno effect that Bruno wants him? Is going to be definitely on the radar? And what is the likelihood that if Manchester United actually make an offer for? 'Cause I did read this last night, and there's a couple of journalists that write for the BBC as well. So there was some quite well-respected journalists, and I think Neil Golding was one of them. And he was saying that Manchester United are ready to make a formal move for Nottingham Forest, Elliot Anderson. And the thing that's interesting about this is they're pretty much saying that Manchester United will not consider any sort of move unless he's interested. So that's the kind of take home message for that one. That United, if they're going to make an offer, they're not going to waste their time. If you remember last season, all the transfer window we went through, all the different conversations we had about Benjamin Sesko and the conversations we had about Mbeumo, Cunha, Manchester United spoke to the player first. They didn't make any offers to the clubs unless the player wanted to join Man United. And I think that we saw the approach with Sesko that it took a long time, but Sesko wasn't interested in other clubs. It looked a bit like we only went for Sesko and Mbuemo after it was apparent they wanted to join United. So I get the feeling with this story is that if Man United do make an offer for Elliot Anderson, it's because they think Anderson would consider moving to Man United. Like that's the only reason they would be looking at doing that. And there is more stories and more being pushed out as well. So I mean, the Elliot Anderson thing, I keep saying to myself, I think it feels a bit like a difficult one. Like it feels like a tricky one to try and get. But maybe Man United looking at it thinking, actually, we feel like there's a significant chance that that happens. So maybe I would just say with some of these transfers, we're going to probably find out quite a lot at some point. So Jim says I'd pay up to 65 for Fernandes. Maybe that's a good question actually. How much would you rate? No, how much would you pay for Mateus Fernandes? That I think everybody says he's going to be cheaper if West Ham get relegated. So the stories that have been out there regarding price, just to kind of put this into context, then there was a story about a week, and actually maybe was it 2 weeks ago that said, or maybe a week ago, West Ham said we want 84 million for Mateus Fernandes. That's our price. Okay, so at the time I said, yeah, that's 84 million is not really realistic if other players are available for less, like too many. But you feel like West Ham are just putting up a big number just to kind of like negotiate to start with. So, and I looked at it and thought Man United might feel they can get Fernandes for about 50 million if they get relegated. West Ham subsequently came out and said, now we want to make sure that they get a profit on what they paid for Matheus Fernandes, and that was only I think 38 plus add-ons. So you're talking about 42 million. So when you're looking at that sort of price, then if you look at somewhere in the middle ground, that Jim says 65, I think that's probably about the money. Like I think that might be about where the price lies. That if you're going to spend 50 million pounds, you could get him if he's relegated. Alex Scott might actually cost something similar, so you might be looking at similar sort of price. Like Alex Scott is apparently 65 million is the price that Bournemouth want, but I think he's available for a bit cheaper than Fernandes, I would guess. I think he's a good player as well. And I'm guessing that Alex Scott, United said they'd pay 50. I'm guessing like 55-ish, maybe gets that deal done. That if you think it might be that all these transfers cost more or a little bit less than we think. At the moment, I think everybody thinks midfield signings are going to be really expensive. And so, yeah, that's what I think. Hey, Gregory, don't go to sleep yet, Gregory. We need to get your opinions on midfield signings. But morning, Tony, to the chat as well. Good to see you, Tony. Hope you're having a good morning. So apparently Fernandez idolizes Bruno, so we got that factor. Then this is probably going to be one of the factors as well that Manchester United will effectively they'll have to go to Matheus Fernandez's camp and speak to his agents, speak to him, and make him probably you're essentially offering what are you going to do with the next 4 or 5 years of your career. I think in Manchester United for a start Matheus Fernandes can play with Bruno Fernandes. That's something that might be appealing to him. If you've got a world class player in front of you that creates amazing amount of chances, that's going to be attractive. If you can then focus on your job, you're going to have people like maybe have experienced people like Harry Maguire, and you're going to have up and coming quality players like Aidan Heaven behind you. So I think there's a lot to go on, isn't there? There's a lot of things that could be positive. Obviously, Paris Saint Germain have got an unbelievable team. The question you get with Paris Saint-Germain is, are you going to be sat watching most of the matches or are you going to be getting involved? Would I take Van Heck from Brighton as a centre back if Martinez is sold? I think Van Heck's had a good season and would certainly be in consideration. I think Man United do like Murillo, who's a bit more expensive. I'm just wondering if Manchester United actually don't sign a centre back this season and maybe they go for someone that's going to cost a bit more than Heck. I think Van Heck's about 35 million. So I think he's good. And Lissandro Martinez, if he got sold, I'd certainly be considering someone like Van Heck, but I think Man United would like Murillo. He's very good, but he's going to be very expensive. I think he's going to be at least like 15, 20 million more than Van Heck. So we'd have to see. So you think 60 is a lot given they'll be relegated? It feels like there's going to be a different price, isn't there? So Tony says apparently there's no relegation clause from Fernandes. I think with this one, Tony, that some people said there was, some people are doubting it. I think legally, then if there's clauses in people's contracts, legally people aren't really allowed to talk about it. So there'll be non-disclosure agreements. So I can't remember who it was now. It wasn't Ben Jacobs, but it was somebody else that talks about clauses. And I think Ben Jacobs has been really careful with his language recently. So Ben Jacobs doesn't say that there's clauses anymore. I don't think he's allowed to say that because it was either him or somebody else got prosecuted or got sued by agents. So I don't think anyone actually knows like if there's a relegation clause. I think everybody assumes there's going to be something, and I think a lot of people would assume that when a team gets relegated, certain players will want to leave the club, and certain players will be available. Mateus Fernandes might be one of those players that is available, and that it might be that there might not be a relegation clause, but the price might be a bit lower. They might want to get some money in. Who knows? I think most people assume the price will be a bit lower, but I don't think there's definitely a relegation clause. I think to say who's in for him, then to go through this story as well, the teams that are in for him, Arsenal content creators are all over this story from Times in the Times yesterday, I think, and this morning saying that Arsenal are considering a move for Fernandes. They want to strengthen their midfield. They've already got Steven Mendy, they've got Declan Rice, they've got a decent squad there. Is Fernandes going to get enough game time at Arsenal? Are Arsenal going to be a better team than Manchester United next season? That could be a question as well. That is the gap closed enough to be like a situation where people are considering and say, yeah, who do you compare him with then? Because if you look at this and go, yeah, there's no doubt that I think with Matheus Fernandes, when you look at what he's good at, then this is somebody that I was saying yesterday that Manchester United over the 25-26 season were actually the top of the league in terms of duels won. Like we're over 52% duels won. We're top of the league. And clearly, this is a player also that has a very high dual win percentage, and that's something that we're never going to replace Casemiro with a like for like signing. That just doesn't happen. Can Matheus Fernandes do a lot of the defensive work Casemiro did? 100%. He's going to be more mobile as well, so he's going to potentially get even better at that sort of work. But I think in terms of this one that now, this player is good on the ball, like is good with the ball at his feet, but also I think something that Man United are looking for to make us hard to play against is some of the attributes in terms of like the work rate off the ball, and that's something that Fernandes is going to be very good as well. Sander Berg, interestingly about Sander Berg, if you saw the stream last night, I was talking to Helgi, and after we finished the stream, we had a conversation for probably too long, so it was quite late last night, and we were looking at the comparisons. And Sanderberg is a player that Helgi really likes, so we looked at Sanderberg. Sanderberg has a very high duel win percentage, so he's very good in duels. He'll win his battles, but he doesn't contest a lot of duels. Like he doesn't win back possession as much as you'd think. So if you're going to compare Sanderberg as a cheap option, then he has been good. He has been good. I won't say that, but if you're looking at which is going to be the best player, then Sanderberg is not very close to Matheus Fernandes and Elliot Anderson in terms of like how many times they're going to win the ball back in a match. So Sanderberg, if it's a one-on-one duel and he's involved in the duel, he's going to win it as much as Anderson, as much actually probably slightly more than Anderson, but as much as Fernandes. I think that Fernandes is probably going to be maybe the more effective because he's going to win his duels more than Anderson, the same as Sanderberg, but he actually just contests a lot more as well. So I think Sanderberg's not a bad option, like as a backup option, but I think he's not of the same quality. So it's like you get Sanderberg a bit cheaper, but he's not the same quality for as you can look at the stats, the data's that's out there, and Matheus Fernandes is a level above Sanderberg in terms of that one. But Sanderberg's a sensible consideration. I just think United are looking at trying to get the best possible players. So you think Fernandes comes to us, Arsenal will go for Julian Alvarez. I think Arsenal might have, yeah, they might have different targets as well, didn't they? And Ben Jacobs says for Matheus Fernandes, this is one where I think the price is going to be, it's going to be quite expensive, isn't it, for a 21-year-old? But you might be looking at, is there going to be a massive reduction if they get relegated? It might not be as much as people think. That it might depend on, like, it might depend on what West Ham want to do. They're going to have parachute payments. I don't think West Ham are financially in massive trouble, so they might look at. They sold Luca Paqueta for quite big money in January, didn't they? They got about 45 million for him. So, and they're going to have the Premier League money this season, parachute payments. I don't think they need to sell Fernandes. That's probably the point here. So it might be that they decide to cash in, and an offer of 60 to 70 would probably be, a good deal for them. I say Ben Jacobs thinks it's between 60 and 70 as a realistic price. I think this might be after West Ham saying they'd want 84 million. And so they would say if West Ham go down, so that's the price if they go down, they would be open to, and that's including add-ons as well. So I think when you're looking at the deals, Manchester United did a deal with, how much was it for Embuemo? It was like 65, and then there was like six or seven add-ons. So if you're looking at this sort of deal, could this be like 50 million up front? And then could you be putting down maybe like say 10 to 15 on add-ons that if and maybe the add-ons could be linked to getting Champions League football again next season or something along those lines where it doesn't necessarily have to happen, as rapidly, and it's not going to be on goals because Fernandez isn't a goal scorer. So maybe it could be on appearances, starts, and it could be, now it could be along those lines, couldn't it? That in Buemo's contract, it was like said that when he signed, the some of the add-ons were linked to Champions League football, like getting back into the Champions League. So if Man United did the same sort of thing with Fernandez, it would just mean that we just finish in the top four next season, we get Champions League football, and then the add-ons are paid. And maybe that's going to be a sensible way of doing it because those add-ons will eventually will go find their way to West Ham, but it does mean that United can maybe spend a little bit more this summer. And so maybe what we see is that I think for Elliot Anderson, this might be a case as well. I think for Elliot Anderson, the price will include add-ons, and it might be this is just a way of effectively paying maybe 85% of the transfer fee up front or like 80% and then kicking the next 20% over to the following season. So I think that's probably going to be the best way of Man United doing business. That if Fernandez costs 65, maybe we're looking at 55 plus 10 add-ons. I think that was our starting bid for Embuemo, something like that. So it might be 55 plus 10, and then that. So effectively on the books, day one, it's going to be 55. The add-ons will then kick in maybe 12 months later, and then that will mean that we don't have to pay all the money on the first financial year. So it could be a sensible way of structuring it. I think that's something United have to do a lot in the next couple of years to try and get some bigger deals done. I mean, we're talking about signing very expensive players, aren't we? Like a lot of them. So 60, if they want 84, if there's 84 is not realistic, is it? Like I think 84 is not realistic. I think if you're looking at a price, if someone offers 70 million for Fernandez, I think he's gone. Like he'll want to leave the club, and I think West Ham will then invest the money as well. And Jim said a report going around saying West Ham says Fernandez is going to be the same price if relegated or not. They might say that. I think there's definitely. I think West Ham are. If you look at the media, the West Ham sources are definitely trying to push up the price, aren't they? They're definitely trying to say that it's going to be a lot of money. And if you look, how much is it going to cost? I think it's about 60. That maybe about 60. If West Ham get relegated, I think 60 million. Like we're talking about a relegated player costing a relegated team selling a player for 60 million. Has that ever happened before? So I think it would be possibly one of the most expensive signings from a team that's been relegated ever. But I think 60 is probably fair. 60, say add-ons exclusive should get the deal done. I think 60-ish, like, but if you're looking at maybe say news doing the round states about 60, I think 60 feels like a fair price for everybody. A report going around says, well, yeah, okay, I read that, didn't I? Yeah, no, I think they're going to be definitely looking at trying to get the most like out of this deal. But so we'll be looking 160 to sign both Anderson and Fernandez. I said this like a month ago, a few weeks ago. I think £200 million for three midfielders is something that United might be looking at. One thing I saw last night, I was looking, like I said, to do some comparisons of certain players. And if you look at what Anderson does, if you look at what Ederson does at Atalanta, he does have the same attributes, but it is in Serie A. So the numbers are quite similar, but it is in Serie A. So if you're looking at Anderson and you're looking at a backup for Anderson, if you're going to be signing Anderson, I think maybe Ederson is actually quite a good backup for Anderson. And this was like Helgi was saying this last night, and we looked at the data, and the data matched incredibly well. So if you look at the things that Anderson's good at, and you look at the things Ederson's good at, it's almost like they overlap. Like it's almost like the same sort of player profile, but he would be a lot cheaper, and you could be looking at a situation there where let's say 200 million could get three players in. So it could be that, let's say for example, 100 million goes on Elliot Anderson, 60 million goes on Mateus Fernandes, 40 million goes on Ederson from Atalanta. That's 200 million, three players in, and that's probably going to be in the budget. I think that was roughly what we paid for three attacking players last season. I think that's what we could pay for three midfield players this season. And this question would be, what do you do around that? But I think that would also be, if we consider the price, and you think like, is Anderson going to cost a bit more? If he's going to cost a bit more, you put some add-ons on. If Fernandes is going to cost a bit more, you put some add-ons on, and effectively you kick the money over to the next financial year, and that would be a way of doing it. Edison will cost about 40. Like that's going to be, it's not going to get more expensive than that. It might even be very slightly cheaper. So this would be a way of getting three players. Two players are Premier League proven, and one player hasn't played in the Premier League, and that would probably make sense. Like Man United would favour Premier League players, but they will also be open to like, this player's not a, this player's not a Premier League player like Edison, but he's got a lot of experience. So you would feel that that's actually not a bad deal. So I think it's a sense that would be a sensible strategy. You'd have three players, but also if Anderson's not available or Anderson's being rested, you've got Edison to come in, who's obviously very experienced professional, would be a good complementary part with Mainu as well. Wins his duels, he's physical. So there's lots of positives regarding that one. So I don't see any negatives regarding what's happened that sort of signing. And for me, that might be a sensible window. Three midfield players in, and we get enough money to spend on the rest of our team as well. So I agree, Funcho. That could be roughly the price, and it makes a bit of sense, doesn't it? If a player hands over a transfer, yeah, genuinely, if a player hands over a transfer request, then they might lose some loyalty bonuses, but that can be factored into the contract, can't it? So if Man United are looking to give Fernandez a decent contract, if he loses a bit of money because he pushes or he makes the deal a bit easier to do, I don't think it's a big problem. Then Man United are like, yeah, we'll work that in. It's like Belieber handing in a transfer request or something. That how much is Belieber going to lose? Like it's not on the sort of salary he's going to be at Manchester United. So Manchester United can definitely. With some of these players, they could do that. I mean, I don't know the specifics, but they will lose some money, but they get compensated, won't they, by Man United if they did that. Morning, Genghis. Good to see you in the chat. For people that are watching, please don't forget to click the like. Please don't forget to subscribe if you're new as well. We're on 814 subscribers. It'd be great to try and hit 1K before the transfer window opens, but we've only got 1 month to do that. If you want to be kept up to date, though, regular Man United streams and lots of guests on the channel as well that have different views, a few calling shows. So please subscribe and share the stream if you can. Mateus Fernandes was never going to be cheap, like 100% never going to be cheap. But you don't get the best quality players cheaper, do you? But I think these are the deals where if you look at Anderson, maybe 10 million of the price could be add-ons. If you look at the same with Fernandes, 10 million could be add-ons. I think United could actually Edison will be just I don't think there's going to be add-ons in that deal. I think we just buy him. So I think that we could be looking at potentially those three signings. The question mark I've got really is I feel like Belieber's no, definitely on the under consideration as well. I don't know where I'd stand with Matheus Fernandes and Belieber. That if, according to sources, and Ben Jacobs is usually pretty decent with a lot of information, so if Man United have Matheus Fernandes as third, we know that first on the list is Elliot Anderson. is like who's number second? No, who's second on the list? Is it going to be too many? Is it going to be Tonali? Is it going to be Belieber? Because I look at this and think if Man United spend that much money, that doesn't involve Belieber, but everybody thinks Belieber's like close to being like the most likely signing. So is it going to be a question mark over if Manchester United don't get Anderson, they get Belieber. So is it going to be Anderson or Belieber? And if we get Belieber, it's still going to be Fernandez and so you got Zao Gomez there, but I think it could be Edison. So that's my prediction. I think the transfer window could actually look like Belieber, Fernandez, and Edison. I'm thinking that might be something Man United go for. How would people feel about that if that was the window? If we spend, I don't know how much Belieber's going to cost. Fernandez, we think is about 60, so maybe you're looking at 120, 130 for those two, and you're looking at maybe say 40 for Edison. So you could spend 170 million. You could get Belieber, you could get Fernandez, and you could get Edison. That might be something that happens as well. But it depends on with Anderson it's genuinely up in the air. Like Man United can make an offer. We don't know where Anderson wants to go. There's a lot of journalists guessing at the moment, and most people think he's going to go to City, but we don't really know where he's going to be going for. So someone said about a secret clause. Mm, the thing about a secret clause is nobody knows. Nobody knows if it's there or not. The only thing I could say is that just remember what people say, remember what the sources say, and then when it comes to the transfer window opening, we can just like we can look at which were the most credible sources. I remember last year when it came to sources from Sesco, Bild was very good. So German sources like Bild is very good. And if you're looking at, I think actually the Jan Argafjortov was actually quite good as well. He put out some good information, and I think you have to look at it as well and say David Ornstein will probably be on point. But I think like Fabrizio wasn't too bad last summer, but he tends to like hype things up a little bit. So a few clubs will be in for him. Genghis, you're not wrong. The links to Arsenal are a recent thing I've seen. And to be honest, I'm not surprised because Arsenal should be looking at trying to strengthen and should be looking at trying to get more depth in their team next season. And it's the same with every club. Like Man United want to fix their midfield, but every other club in the Premier League is also looking to do the same thing. Real Madrid are also looking to do the same thing. So no, he will be up there. So Belieber plus two other cheap signings, says Natasha. So I said that I wouldn't be surprised if it was Belieber plus Fernandez plus Edison, and that would be about. So I don't know if that's considered cheap, but it might be about 170 million pounds to get three players in. That would feel that that's definitely achievable, and that would give you money to maybe get one or two other players in the first team as well. So I think that would be achievable. I don't know what's considered cheap these days. It's probably like is 40 million considered cheap, and then 50 million is considered not a bad deal. It could be along those lines, couldn't it? Yeah, the fact the World Cup starts before the transfer window opens is going to make it it's a bit tricky. I think the World Cup starts on the 11th, doesn't it? The transfer window opens on the 15th. It's a bit annoying, isn't it, as well? So Believer's still having issues with his knee. Mobility isn't as good. So buying him, yeah, I guess with that one, you need to make sure that he's fully recovered. He does seem to be improving recently. He's putting some good performances, and I wonder if like Believer's got over his whatever issue it was that was holding him back, like injury wise. And maybe we're going to play Brighton on the last day of the season anyway, aren't we? So we might get to find out how he does against Casemiro and Manu in that game. But um, I don't think there's any chance that I don't think Southgate's going to manage club football, so I wouldn't worry about Southgate. And PSG linked to Fernandez back, say a while ago. Hopefully, Bruno can sway him. I think a lot of people do see this story as well that's been talked about. And if you're looking at any sort of evidence that might be pushing Fernandez to Manchester United, I think it is Bruno Fernandez. Bruno Fernandez does seem to be the one thing we keep seeing that Bruno Fernandez speaks very highly of Mateus Fernandes. And Mateus Fernandes, obviously, Bruno Fernandes is like one of his heroes. it feels a little bit like if Man United. I think if Man United want Fernandes, I think Man United get Fernandes. I think that's going to be one that if we want him, I think he'll come. I think he'll join Man United, and that might be a factor. So I think that would be almost like not a cheap deal, but it would be a good deal. So you would take Belieber, Fernandez plus Edison. This is what I mean. These are quite. I know people say these are quite cheap, but it's actually you don't have to spend crazy money. Like you don't have to spend insane money. But it depends. If Anderson's not on the table, I think this is a better option than getting Tonali. When I looked at Tonali, he doesn't win the ball back that much. I think we need that in our team. So I think if we're looking at if we're looking at like Bruno Guimaraes does the work in Newcastle that we would want in our team. I think if we were looking to replace Casemiro, I think Bruno Guimaraes is better. Tonali would be very expensive. I think Man United are put off by some of the off-field issues, some of the scandal in Milan, and some of the betting issues. So I think Tonali might be considered a bit too risky. Yeah, no, I think with Belieber, it's a bit concerned over injury, isn't it? But if he was fully recovered, yeah, if he was injured, Brighton have kind of messed up this season, haven't they, with this one? I'd say Belieber, no World Cup, Edison. No, I think there might be deals for okay, it might be coincidence, but I think there might be also other reasons why Edison would be if you imagine all the things that Anderson's good at in the Premier League. Edison has very similar data, very similar stats, but he just it's a bit under the radar at the moment. I think a lot of people look at it because he's in Serie A. The question mark is going to be, can Edison do that in the Premier League that he does in Serie A? I think it's probably I know difficult to assume he'd be at exactly the same level, but I don't think it would be a bad option. And we might be talking about Edison as being a rotation option anyway. So Edison would be a lot better than Agate, and I think that's what Man United would be looking at. Like he would be a replacement for Agate. Probably costs it might cost slightly cheaper than Agate cost. Like Agate was a bit expensive for what he brought to the team, so I think that might be something. So Tonali's not a ball winner. No, if you're looking at what Man United need in the midfield, Tonali's good at a lot of things, but winning duels is not his forte. Winning back possession is not something that he's good at. Carlos Baleba has been levels above that this season. So if you look at someone that's been putting up numbers that are similar to Casemiro in terms of winning duels and winning back possession, Carlos Baliba's been doing that this season. So if you're looking at complementary parts, I think Koe if you're going to start with Koe and you're going to put someone alongside Koe to play in the same team as him, then Tonali would not fit that well. Like they would not be winning the ball back loads. It would make our midfield a bit more vulnerable. But if you dropped Edison in there, Edison actually works better than Tonali with Mainu. And if you look at what Fernandes brings, Fernandes would work better as well. So, I mean, too many is an elite player in terms of when we look at considerations of like defensive attributes, too many would be elite, but that's something that's going to be, yeah, definitely a factor. And would staying in London play a part of his decision? I don't think so. I mean, he's Portuguese. He's come to London as his first club. I don't think that would be a factor. I think a lot of it might come down to the club and which if Man United make a serious offer with Bruno Fernandes and he's just broken into the Portuguese national team. We got Dallo, we got Bruno Fernandes. I think that it would definitely help him settle at Manchester United having those two players in the squad, and I think that would be a factor as well. The fact Man United are actually finishing, since January we've been a better football team than Arsenal. We're picking up more points, so I think that there's a lot of reasons why Man United can get these players in. Now, Aiden Heaven jumped ship, so did Chido Obi, and Fernandez. He's going, he might get an offer from Arsenal, but I think if Man United come knocking, I think we can get a player that Arsenal want. Like we've done it over decades, haven't we? Had a bigger pull. So, I mean, I've not seen anything like that, Lumen. If you do see something though, let us know. So I feel United have already set a price tag for the age range, say 26 players and upwards. I think with this one, I think Manchester United have. I think United have looked at it and say like, if there's a player they consider like levels better than any other option on the market, they might go quite big. I mean, how big they go, I guess, is going to depend on if they think there's a sensible alternative. And it feels a little bit like they said, like there might be a price range for 26 years and up, and it might be that they want to pay. Say for Edison, he'd be like 40 million, wouldn't he? So it wouldn't be loads. And I think if you're looking at younger players, we don't mind paying a huge salary, it seems, or a huge amount up front. And it could be that you could factor in. I think what they see is that if you sign a player that's going to be 21, 22, 23, that player could be at your club for 8 to 10 years. And if you spend 100 million, then in 5 years' time, it's paid off. The player's still at the club. You don't need to replace that player, and it makes better sense long term. If you spend 50 million pounds on a player that then 3 years' time you want to replace, you're then spending out another 50 to 60, and the market might have gone up again. So it does become a situation where you keep chasing your rebuild and you never really get a rebuild done. So it's a bit of a frustrating thing. I would say Tonali is the player. If Man United bought Tonali, they might have to look at Manu not being in the first team, and they might have to get someone alongside him. Maybe Tonali would work with Mateus Fernandes. So if you considered that maybe Tonali would work okay with a different player. But I don't think with one thing you could say is that maybe some of the things that Tonali's not doing this season is because Bruno Guimaraes does that in that team. But I think Tonali's good, but the things that he's weak at are also things that Mainoo's not very strong at. So it kind of like means that you might be accentuating some of the weaknesses in each other's game, which I think makes for not a good partnership. So one of like too many, or if you're going to go for too many, he's a machine at winning the ball. Nobody wins the ball more than too many. I think he's like 96% dual win rate. If you look at progressive passes, too many is insane. So no, and also one of the things about too many is what he's doing in Real Madrid. He is so disciplined. Like he's going to be someone that holds his position. He's so disciplined. It would be he's a model professional on the pitch. I think he would be someone that's a good signing, but difficult. I think Belieber's potentially more exciting because I think Belieber played differently a year ago. I think Belieber could do a bit of the ball carrying as well. We've seen that in previous seasons. So yeah, and I think there's probably a lot of reasons. Like I think Tonali for me, the more you look into it, the more you're saying that I don't think Tonali would be a good fit. I'm making the assumption here that I think Man United feel that Kobe Mainoo is going to be in the first team. They're looking to rebuild around Mainoo, so I don't think that we should be looking at. I think we should be looking at what works with Mainoo to start with. And obviously Casemiro did. Too many would. I think Belieber would. Anderson would and Mateus Fernandes would. So all those targets we're looking at, the one thing they got in common is they probably work very well with Manu in the starting 11, and that's something which I think Man United will be looking at a data-driven approach as well. I think they might be drawing similar conclusions to a lot of us have been today, which makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? When you look at it, I might do a stream at some point where we put the data on the screen and we kind of like look at what each player's good at and see how everything fits together because there is a lot of information out there and at the moment, we're just looking at transfer news, but we can actually look at individual players and go, right, how would it work if we got these two players in midfield? Their weaknesses and strengths kind of overlap? Do they complement each other on the pitch? So I think that some of the things Mainoo's not good at, you could definitely look at it and go, put Fernandez in the team, he's brilliant at that. Put Belieber in the team, he's brilliant at that. And too many and Anderson. So for me, they're four players I think United should look at. So I know we've had a big discussion about lots of different players today, yesterday, the day before. I'm going to say at the moment, if Man United sign three players and it comes out of too many Anderson, Belieber, Edison, Matheus Fernandes, I think they can't go wrong. I think that if you get three out of those five players, I don't think Man United can really go wrong. I think that all those players will work as a sensible midfield and we'll have a few different permutations that we can move around depending on. You have to factor in injuries, rotation, suspensions, those sort of things, and also maybe just a different tactical setup. So we would have different options for different games. So setting up for a team that's going to play a low block might be different from setting up to play against Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, for example. So I think those like three of those five would be 100% achievable. I would say Tonali and Mainu doesn't look like a good blend. I don't think it is Genghis, because if you look at Tonali and look at Mainu, they're both not very good at, they don't win back possession loads. If you compare it to other players in that position, I'm not saying that they're bad at it. I'm just saying they don't excel at that. Something which, when you have Mateus Fernandes excels at ball winning, and you have Belieber that excels at winning back, and you have Casemiro who's leaving that was good at that, that it feels like you need to get those sort of players in. So, is there any poll people want to see in the chat? I've not done. Yeah, Maina will also be rotated, so it might be that if you're looking at options, there might be when there's players that are considered quite similar to Mainu. I think you might need to get one of those players in as well. So you might need to get you have to also have to consider if Man United signed Belieber plus Fernandes, does that work as a midfield? Or if Man United signed Angela Stiller, would that work, or would Edison work alongside Anderson? Would Edison work alongside Fernandez? Edison and Belieber. You have to consider all these different options. So Casemiro's duel percentage is incredibly high, but in terms of like how much he wins the ball back, it's not going to be as much because he's not as mobile. So if you consider Casemiro, I'll just quickly check. So dual winning percentage. So Casemiro, to compare Casemiro with someone like Mateus Fernandes, for example, then Casemiro this season, duels were very good, like 74%. If you look at possession one, Casemiro is pretty much actually no. If you look at it, possession one back, Casemiro is like the gold standard. So he's probably one of the best in the league at winning possession back. So if you look at trying to get someone a bit like Matheus Fernandes in there, let me just check. So Matheus Fernandes and Casemiro, then Matheus Fernandes has slightly better dual winning percentage than Casemiro, only slightly. He wins possession back, a lot as well. The difference is going to be between Casemiro and Matheus Fernandes is Matheus Fernandes actually makes a lot more progressive passes, which is interesting. He does carry the ball more, so you're looking at very different players. If you're looking at winning the ball back, this is quite interesting data. So maybe I'll try and share it on the screen and see if I can get that up. So give me a second. I'll just see if I can share the information on the screen because it would be, I think, interesting to see. So if I can do this, if I can't do that, I could take a screenshot maybe. But to compare what Casemiro is losing, I think you have to look at it. I don't think I can share it. I've got a window open, so I can look at it, but I can take a screenshot and say. So if you're looking at trying to replace Casemiro, then I think Matheus Fernandes does something. So let me just take a quick screenshot. I can probably put it on screen then. I'll work out how to display this because I think this will be something that is really useful. But if you want to look at Casemiro and look at Matheus Fernandes, I'll give me 1 second and I'll put it on the screen and we can compare. So I think in terms of I think for one question is going to be if when Casemiro leaves, what is the one thing Casemiro brings to the team that you think we're going to miss? That's probably a good talking point for a future stream. There's definitely going to be, for me, there's going to be a few things that we missed, but I think maybe, obviously, like the goal threat, but I think United might be looking at making sure we replace someone that can win the ball back as a minimum. So let's just resize this. But when it comes on the screen, Matheus Fernandes is going to be in green, and we're going to see Casemiro in the brighter color. It might look a pink sort of color. So let me know in the chat if you can see this and if it makes sense. If you can see it, I'll talk you through it. But the green figure is Matheus Fernandes. Casemiro is in the pink. If you look at the arrow to the bottom right, so I don't think you can see if I hover over it, but the one where the pink is that towards the edge, that's possession one back. So the bottom right is like possession one back in like the 5 o'clock position on a clock. And if you look at ball carrying, that's where Fernandes is going to be maybe something that's going to be closer to Belieber last season. He's going to be better ball carrier, but Casemiro does not carry the ball back. When you look at dual winning percentages, they're almost exactly the same, but Casemiro is more of a passer. You can see that forward passing, progressive passes, key passes, not something either has done any difference in at all. But yeah, forward passing from Fernandes is actually quite high. So if you look at that as a percentage, but forward passing for Casemiro quite a lot more. And I think that you're looking there at somebody also, don't forget that there's over a decade of experience between these two players, like over a decade. So if you want to see like Mateus Fernandes as a 21-year-old, we're comparing him to a player that's been world class as a 34-year-old. So dual winning percentages exactly the same. So that's probably only going to go up for Fernandes. Possession one back. Casemiro is like the probably the best in the league. He's like on 100 in terms of like that. But Mateus Fernandes is very high as well. And the difference also is going to be that ball carrying is something we're going to get from Mateus Fernandes. So maybe that's going to be someone that is going to get around the pitch more as well. But these numbers will go up. Like these numbers will go up because he's a 21-year-old. He's going to improve. But hopefully, does that help with people watching? Does that help with trying to explain the difference regarding that one? If I can get a way of actually mapping this to a stream, then what we can do is we can have a conversation where we can compare different players and see how they how they fit in. And Loomis says only headers will be missed. I mean, we shouldn't really be relying on headers from a defensive midfielder, but they've been helpful this season. I think United will be looking at a bit more stability. And so, yeah, this doesn't take into account if people give the ball away, obviously. So that's something you just have to see if you're watching. And say United needs to get proper six. That should be our focus. And say Sangari is a better option to replace Casemiro, very similar to Casemiro. Yeah, we can do a little bit of this in a next stream. We can actually have a look at just a quick question. Would people be interested in the stream where we can we can do this sort of data driven approach and we can look at different combinations of midfielders and see what works? And you know, people are going to have different views on what they want to see in midfield. Would this be something that people are interested in seeing? If it is, let me know because it's something we can do. But it's something that again might not appeal to everybody. We will kind of focus on news stories, but again, that was just to show you that I think United are looking in the right place. If you look at players and what they can do, what they bring to the team, I think Man United are looking at players that are going to be solid defensively as a prime. That's the one thing that links a lot of our targets as well. I would say no, Sangari is quite highly rated. I think with Sangari, you also I think with some players that it's like Edison is doing very well. If you look at the data, Edison is very good at Atalanta. You could say Sangari is very good at Lens. But you could probably say for both those players, it might be difficult to replicate the exact success level they've had in those leagues in the Premier League because it's a bit more difficult. And I think that's why Matheus Fernandes' numbers are more impressive because no, he is doing that in the Premier League as well. And Tony says we need press resistant midfielders. Like someone like Kobe Mainoo is pretty press resistant. He's like good in possession. Who would you like then, Tony? If you could pick like some key players. Yeah, Tonali's good at that. Like he has got things he's good at. But the only question I've got with that one is like Tonali plays with a quite well organised midfield. So is it going to be a situation where like is Tonali going to be able to step up on those sort of aspects if he's not there? I don't know. It's difficult to say, isn't it? It's like quite tricky to say. If anybody's watching that hasn't subscribed, if you click the subscribe button, it'll ping on the screen and it'll be nice to try and hit an extra subscriber this morning. So the perfect replacement for Casemiro is Tchouaméni, who's better than Casemiro at everything's his fun shoe. No, Tchouaméni's world class. Can Man United get him? Honestly, I do not know. It depends on whether he wants to stay at Real Madrid. That's probably the biggest talking point. Lucas says, big up to you, Luca. Question for Arsenal fan that's watching, Luca, is Manchester United are heavy. We've been talking about Anderson, let's say, and we've been talking about Fernandes a lot today. What do you think of Arsenal's position regarding Mateus Fernandes? Are they seriously going to make an offer? It has been reported in the Times that this feels a little bit like Sesko last season, that you're looking at, say, too many Belieber and Fernandes. really good options. I would say, to be honest, Ian and Tony. I think Ian said something similar as well. If you got too many, Belieber and Scott Fernandez, I don't think you could go too far wrong, could you? Um, to say too many is better at everything, it depends what you're judging on. Like too many's not going to be scoring headers, is he? But if you're looking at defensive attributes, too many's going to be. I think too many's world class at what he does. Like he is incredibly disciplined as well. How much have you seen that Arsenal would be prepared to pay for Fernandez, Luca? That might be a good one if you know. I think the price has been changed every sort of day, isn't it? Funchi says, is it Bruno Fernandes? Is Bruno Fernandes the key to this deal? Like Funchi, do you remember when we saw the story about Bruno Fernandes and it's like Bruno Fernandes, is he going to stay at Man United? Does it depend on Man United's ambition? And I start getting like flashbacks to Wayne Rooney going into Alex Ferguson's office and saying, what's the plan? Are we going to be getting some good players in? Are we trying to win the league again? And Alex Ferguson basically told him to get out. Um, I think this might be a different situation where if Bruno Fernandes is going to be a Man United player next season, and he really rates Fernandes, and if Fernandes wants to, it does feel a bit like uh, that's going to influence the player, isn't it? That's going to be a determining factor that you'd look at it and say, I think that's going to be a determining factor. And Cody says, yeah, no, I think most people think the same way. If Man United want Fernandes, Man United get Fernandes. I think that's what we're assuming. It just feels a bit like it's no, not Man United's deal to lose, but it feels like this is what Man United could do. We could definitely get this player in. The only thing that too many is lose out on Casemiro is possession one. I think it could be like possession one is the one thing, isn't it? And key passes could be. I think key passes, Casemiro hasn't made that many this season. If you look at it, when I was looking at the data last night after the stream, I did say last night we finished the stream about. I can't remember what time we finished last night, but we finished the stream, and then for about an hour and a half, I was talking to Helgi backstage. We actually watched a couple of Man United videos of like games we'd actually been to go and watch them, and then we had a look at a big comparison of different players. Too many is elite and an elite football player. He's so disciplined. You're not going to get passing from too many, but in terms of like, so you're not going to get any ball carrying, but you're going to get elite defensive work. He's going to win all his duels. He's going to be ball progressor, 100%. He's elite at that one as well. It's a different player, isn't it? And say Sangari and Fernandez metrics are very close. Yeah, we did look at that and say if you look at Mateus Fernandes, you look at Sangari, you look at someone Elliot Anderson. Elliot Anderson and Edison are incredibly close as well. Edison at Atalanta, and Elliot Anderson at Forest are incredibly close when you look at the metrics. And I think that's why United are considering. I think United are considering Edison as like a backup. So if Anderson's in the team, Edison might be the backup to and do the same sort of role. I think Matheus Fernandes and Sangari are close, but you're looking at one player that's playing in the Premier League at age 21. You're looking at one player playing in the French league at 23, I believe, and that could be the difference. That if the difference is going to be like 10 million in price or 15 million in price, I think Man United will feel like they're going to get a better football player and because they're quite similar at the moment. But like I said, one's a couple of years younger and playing in a more difficult league, so that could be the factor. I think Fernandez is probably a better player than Sangari, but Sangari is very good, and Sangari might be a bit cheaper. And saying get both of them. If you got both of them, then I guess then you're looking for a different third player. And it could be that they considered some of these options as well. But I get the feeling that in terms of like hitting the ground running next season and being as rapid as possible, I get the feeling Man United are going to be going for this not a bias, but I think there's going to be this Premier League proven type scenario where I think that they will go for someone like Fernandez over Sangari. They would go for an Elliot Anderson over, I suppose, like it's not the same as too many, but they might still go if they're going to spend very big on a player. they might edge. I think too many's a difficult one because he's world class. So it would be a difficult decision between too many and Anderson, to be honest. I think the price might end up being quite similar when you factor in the salary. Really tricky. Is Sangare a sexy name? Mm, I think with this one, too many's proved he's done. No, too many's done everything in the game, hasn't he, for Real Madrid? So he is a big name. But they're both the thing is they're both good players. Clearly, the Sangare is not a sexy name for Ineos, but he's a very effective player, and he's having a very good season. I think he might be like, is he forcing his way into Team of the Year in the French league this season? He's been very good this season, but is he going to be the top of the list? I don't think players in the French league will be top of Ineos's list. That's not to say that there's not a good deal to be done. There's obviously a good deal to be done, but I don't think Man United are definitely considering that one. I just say before we wrap up the stream, if you're able to share the stream as we're live and subscribe if you're new, because the people that are watching, subscribing's free, and we're just trying to hit 1K before the window opens, if that's possible. But if you are watching, you haven't subscribed, there's no cost to subscribing. It's free to watch everything on the channel, and it would be great to welcome you to the community. So, any final questions before we wrap up? I'm going to try and check the compilations, check your scouting reports, and then if you're in the Discord server, then I will I'll put a link to it just now so you can get involved. If you're in the Discord server, then post things there because that's the best way of sharing information with the community. When we're not when we're live, you can post some things in there, but if you're not, then just get involved. Just post something, and we can see it at some point. So let me just share the Discord link. For people that are interested in Discord, I'll post that there. And I'll go for a few of the final comments before. There is going to be more and more information coming out, so I know that there's going to be. Let's try and find this one. You like Alex says he likes Belieber. The only worry with him is that it's mainly Bruno and Belieber will all prefer the left of midfield. I guess that's something to figure out, isn't it? That that yeah, I think whoever we get, then it's going to be. I think whoever we get is going to be something that we need to do this one. Say Lons is asking for a minimum of 50 million euros for Sangare. Um, it could be, couldn't it? It could be they're offering for a lot of money. Yeah. What you're suggesting? What you're suggesting more than organic growth? Right? Organic growth is fine, but if you're able to, people that are watching, if you're able to leave a comment on the video and share it, that will be key as well, just to like teach the algorithm which fans will be interested in Man United content. So at the moment, the channel's under the radar because it's only 800 subscribers. If we can push that number up, and that's going to help a lot. Yeah, I agree. If you look at like where did too many come from, the French league, and where was Mbappe, the French league? I mean, he's at Monaco, wasn't he? And there's been loads of good players coming through the French league. Man United should get involved because 50 million, but maybe Man United are thinking that you can get Anderson for not much more. So if the price is going to be like 10 million difference, 50 million difference, I think Man United might go for that one. I'm not familiar with this player. So no doubt Man United will be interested when he's 20 years old and costs 60 million pounds. That's when we'll be interested. No, these are the sort of players that is he ready for a move to Man United? Then I think United are looking for players. I think we're looking for players who are a bit closer to being ready in the first team, and it might be that that's why people feel there's a bias towards the Premier League. I think that's all it is. But guys, I'm going to wrap up. There will be a live stream later on today, 1 p.m. If you're around then, please get involved. If you're, like I said, if you're able to leave a comment on the video as soon as the video stops, that will definitely be appreciated. And if you can share it and subscribe, these are the perfect ways of helping grow the channel. So if you want to help grow the channel, just leave a comment on the video like 10 minutes after or 5 minutes after the live stream finishes, and that will be absolutely perfect. So then, guys, thank you for watching. Thanks for supporting, and we'll see you guys.